I'm watching guys grocery games. I'm always trying to get these tips. So everybody, I know it is. Hello, Bailey. How you doing, sweetie? I know that it's all right. I know that it's Super Bowl Sunday, but we're gonna go on and get this party started quickly. There we go. I'm gonna get it going. I've been away for a few days, but I went to the National Prayer Breakfast where I was able to hear live and in person Congressman Jonathan Jackson's prayer that went viral. I can tell you all a little bit about that. It was something really, really special. I'm glad I got a chance to see it for myself. And I felt that just given the environment of the place that it was going to go viral. Or certainly the the response in the room in a in an overwhelmingly Republican crowd. We were among the few blacks and Democrats there. Let me know that he had set another kind of tone. So I'm going to go on and get started in 20 seconds. Oh boy. Hey everybody. Hey everybody. Sending you all much love. And we are up in 10. Daryl. And 5. Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I know it's been a minute. I'm so glad to see you all. Yay. So glad to be here. I have had a very exciting past few days. AM 950 Radio family and my morning stars. I was at the National Prayer Breakfast with my brother, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, but more about that later. Let's talk about our vote. It's an abstract concept until you get to the polls. And if you can get to the polls and you find out that your name is not on the rolls, but this year, something else is going to be happening. We've always known we've had obstructions to the vote, but now there's something more. Steve Bannon, the chief strategist for the president's 2016 campaign. Indeed, he is a political genius, whatever you say. That's what he is. He also speaks the quiet part out loud. And one thing you got to say for President Trump, when he says something, it does come to pass. His words are not idle. People who fail to plan to fail, and he does not plan to fail. Think about that. Well, Steve Bannon said, of course, we are going to put ICE at the polls. Now, mind you, it is illegal for people who are not citizens to vote. So people who are not citizens do not vote. If it happens very rarely. It's just like you are statistically more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to commit voter fraud. And indeed, in the 2020 or 2024 presidential cycle, in North Carolina, there was a voter fraud ring, but it was run by Republicans. 2020, I think it was, Daryl, because people were doing a lot of mail-in voting. And what this gentleman would do was come to as a friendly neighbor or as a friendly voting official, and he'd pick up your vote, but he would just change them. Do you remember that, Daryl, that case?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's something that people do. I mean, really. So what is going on when he calls for ICE to be deployed at the polls? Think about that, everybody. Think about the behavior of ICE. ICE, they don't ask you politely. They physically manhandle you. Let's just be honest. They have killed people, and we've watched them do it. And they knew that we were rolling the tape, and they did not care. So what do you think that they will do when it's time to vote? And people have a whole lot to vote about. People are very concerned about their health care. That now is too expensive for more than 20 million American families to access. SNAP benefits, tenuous. Now, the military budget continues to go up and up and up. It's not going to the enlistees. No. There are payday loan centers on the edges of bases. They are poorly paid. They need to go on public assistance themselves, just like people at the big box stores. And I'm not digressing. I'm giving you a line here, a through line. And it seems, though, that the people are winning. The No Kings March will be in the cold of March 28th. Oh, yeah, I know that's on the verge of April, but at least where I live in the Midwest, it is not reliably warm. in March. But guess what? People are going to be out. There was a memorial for Renee Good, and tens of thousands of people showed up in below zero weather in Minneapolis in the snow. Think about that. But what about ICE? What about his call to deploy ICE to the polls? Now, at the same time, to mind you, just a day or so later, the president talked about nationalizing the elections. Well, maybe not all elections, just 15 spaces to be sure. And 10 states have already complied with Pam Bondi's call to hand over your voter registration data. There's a lot of data there.
Mhm.
So think about that. And mind you, two members of Elon Musk's team, his Doge team, already turned over your voter data or your most personal data to um, Republican operations. You see what's going on here? Mind you, if it happened, if Democrats did this, I'd have a problem with it. I think in principle, we should protect the vote.
Mhm.
Period. I mean, I don't like to see these shenanigans, whoever is doing it. But this is very dangerous. This comes down to voter intimidation, particularly when you see how ICE behave. ICE are aggressive, they are mean, and they are masked, and so it's they're very, very hard to identify. Think about it. Keith Porter was just shooting his gun in the sky, which is what people do for the new year. You start hearing guns, you start hearing shots. Certainly, I assume that they're firecrackers, but you hear all kinds of pow, pow, pow before as we're going into the new year. That's just what people do. But an ICE agent in the complex, in the apartment complex where he was, and people were familiar with him, they knew him. The ICE agent came out, shot him, and killed him. And we still cannot get any relief. So, what about ICE at the polls? And even if they're not physically at the door, what about roadblocks? What about people telling you that violence has erupted at the polls? Who's to say that that is accurate and true? That it's not something that people just decided to, that is a false flag. Let's put it right there. In this environment, you cannot trust anything. So I want to know what you think about his call. His call, and he said very specifically, let me look in my notes here. He said, and he was very, very forward with it, that he said, quote, "You're damn right. We're going to have ICE around the polls come November." And he said it on his War Room podcast. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again. And mind you, he said, and you can whine and cry and throw your toys out of the pram all you want, but we will never allow an election to be stolen. Now, Caroline Wren, who was a guest on this podcast, she was a top Republican fundraiser. She agreed with Bannon, claiming that dissent against ICE activity and its funding was fueling individuals who didn't, quote, want ICE at the polling stations to stop illegals from voting. Illegals voting is not the issue. You voting is the issue. So let's just go all the way. Let's back up. Attorney Darrell Jones, chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition and a former prosecutor. And I think that's important because I want you to toggle between your previous role as a prosecutor, because you understand the police, you understand the inner workings of it because you were in that system. And as one of the nation's leading voting rights advocates, and of course, I want to remind people to go to you and Barbara Wine's radio show on WOLDC. She corrected me this morning, WOLDC News. WOLDC, an iconic radio station at 12 noon Eastern time every Tuesday. I'm sure they will be talking about this. They certainly need to. So let's get right to it. Darrell Jones, he said that they should be deploying ICE at the polls. And then the next day, the president talked about nationalizing elections. Is there a connection?
Well, hello again, Santita, and there absolutely is a connection. What we've seen, coming about has been nothing but a string of tactics that the president and the administration will be deploying and are deploying to try to suppress the vote, to try to suppress the number of people that are coming out. Let's start with what we suspect is going on and what we actually know is going on. We have folks that are doing phone banking around the clock right now. They're phone banking. And what the phone bankers are hearing is the dissatisfaction that everyday Americans are having with what's going on with the federal government, what's going on with ICE, what's going on with regards to the economy. All this dissatisfaction is what people are hearing, are talking about. And so when you add into that this level of dissatisfaction, it's an indication that with this election that's coming up, the midterm election for 2026, that it does not look good for the Republican Party nor the administration. So they want to do whatever they can do to suppress, to slow down the numbers of people that will have access to being able to vote, and by doing that, hoping to save themselves in the House and in the Senate for the 2026 midterm election. So when we look at it with that background, with that understanding of the world that they're entering into, we then have the actions that we have seen being taken. We've had the action in Fulton County where we had the folks going in, ICE going in, everyone going in, DNI, right, going in to try to see and taking ballots from the Fulton County from the Fulton County Board of Elections. The whole focus there is getting access to the voter information. The voter information that they're going to have there are things they're going to be, of course, they're saying it's about the 2020 election, where they're trying to sort through to see if there were any irregularities that occurred in the 2020 election. But the real focus isn't that. Once they have that voter information, they can then start, working toward curtailing efforts, putting forth efforts to try to suppress people from the information they have on the votes and where people vote, how they vote, all that information. All that is in their hands. That's one of the things we're seeing occur. That's also a form of voter intimidation with regards to the people that are working the polls, for the people that are casting the ballots. All of that is a part of that. In addition to that, we then add this layer of what Steve Bannon is talking about. And that is talking about having ICE go out to the polls to try to suppress these places where folks are going to be voting. And you can rest assured that there are going to be places where there are brown and black voters that are going to vote that are identified as being in progressive areas. Those are going to be the 15 or so places that you heard the president talking about. But let's want to be certain that folks get this, because it's not necessarily saying that we're going to stop them from voting, although they're going to be, I suspect, challenging and looking through identifications and really getting in the way to frustrate people's efforts to try to exercise their right to vote. But in addition to that, they want to raise the flag that if you are legally able, and of course we only anticipate people that are legally able to vote going to vote, even if you are legally able to vote, if there are people in your home where you have to go back to that may not be documented in the United States, they want to raise that concern in your mind to say, is it worth it? Do you really want to try this? Because we may follow you back to where you are to see who's in the house. Can we do anything? Who's in the car with you? All of those things are efforts that they could attempt to do with regards to this. And I suspect that, while it may be an immediate attempt to suppress the vote, it's a larger attempt to suppress the vote, because it's not just the individual, it's the sphere of influence that individual has. It's the background, it's everyone that's attached to that individual that they now want the individual to be concerned about as they're coming to vote. We're seeing this expand even more. Let's remember, we're also going into Ohio now, and we know that they're going to be going after the Haitians that are in Ohio. Well, when you start going after the Haitians that are in Ohio, if you're looking at Haitians, I'm not quite certain if you can really tell the difference between an Haitian and African American. Many of the time,
There is no difference.
That's what I'm saying. All right. So you're going to have all of these activities that are going on, which in essence is really going to come down to them trying to harass, suppress, intimidate, place fear into the minds of these voters, and trying to keep them from going to the polls. That's what I suspect we're going to see happening throughout this time. In addition to being at the polls, because we know that in some states it's illegal for the police presence to be at the polls. the question will become, this will be a federal action. So when we get into the state federal roles and how that plays out, what courts do you go to, all these things will be coming into play with regards to the ICE agents being placed at various polling places, probably in swing states, swing polling places throughout the country is what I would anticipate. We had another layer to that too, as well, Santita, because the other layer that's being discussed is, if they're not at the polling place, will they be causing bottlenecks? That is, will they be doing checkpoints where on roads that people take to get to the polls, to slow it down so you can't get there in a timely fashion? So if you're a person that's in a rush, you're trying, you're juggling between your family, your work, and trying to get your vote in. If they can frustrate it so you don't have that time span, that time allotment, and the availability to get to the polling place. That's the other piece that's there with regards to the checkpoints that are going to be popping up at different places. So all of that, Santita, we anticipate is going to be happening across the country and in various areas during this election season.
Would that apply to pedestrian traffic as well as driving traffic?
The checkpoints will apply to everybody. So, it's not just the folks that are driving to the polls, right? It'll be everybody that's going in that direction that will be stopped to go through these checkpoints. And that's what's going to create the delay. That's what's going to create the problem with people trying to get to the polls or to get to work or wherever else it is that they're going. That's what we've seen happen in the District of Columbia. And I suspect that's probably some of what's happening in Minneapolis as well.
Would it stop? I'm going to go back to, of course, people. Let's also kind of widen this out and let me know if I'm incorrect, because we have the worry in other elections has been about and been for people who were ex-felons who had records.
Mm-hmm.
Could they be in the line of fire as well?
Well, in the line of fire, and again, when we're talking about people that are formally convicted of felonies and voting,
Because to me, ICE have looked for they just come up to you. I mean, in Chicago, right, they started just going after Black folks. I mean, they said they were at a Walgreens. They were they just got this Black teenage child and threw him on the ground. And while his family was shouting, "That's my nephew, he's an American," they didn't care.
And that's part of the intimidation. What they want to do is they want to instill that fear. They want to intimidate folks that they're encountering, and that's what that's about. That's the whole authoritarian playbook. It counts on fear. It counts on intimidation, and so that's part of what I suspect we're going to see happening is that type of fear, that type of intimidation in those places. And and we got to remember, we're still at a point now, right, where they're trying to rein in the reins of ICE, the reach of ICE, what they're able to do, what are they liable for, all the qualified immunities, what applies, what doesn't apply, because we're seeing ICE being used in a way that we have never seen it used before. And so, there's a lot of that's going on right now, just trying to figure it all out. But we're at a point right now, in my mind, where we're at the precipice of the election season happening, and if ICE is going to be doing what I suspect, and many of us suspect are going to be doing, now is that time to start figuring out. Problem is, you can't file anything until something actually happens, until they actually show up, and that won't be until the elections start rolling with the early voting. One of the questions that's always asked is, will they be there for early voting, or will they just be there on the election day for the primary and for the general? And we don't know the answer to the question. The answer probably is both. They'll probably do some type of testing or dry running, if you will, through early voting, states that have early voting, to see what's effective in terms of slowing things down so they can favor their people and favor fewer people being at the polls initially. That's what I would suspect that they're going to do. And then you'll see something bigger as the big election day comes around. That's probably what's going to happen in this type of situation. But you're absolutely correct with regards to the tactics that ICE are going to take to try to intimidate, instill fear, and make people question whether or not they want to be there and exercising that right to vote, and whether or not, Santita, they want to bring their children with them. Do they want to expose their children to all of this? Because one of the things that we've always advocated is bring the kid with you when you go to vote. Let them see you in the process. Let them learn what you're doing and see what you're doing and learn from that. So all of that, starts to enter into the equation of what's going to happen during this election season.
Well, correctional officer for the lockdown, hi, darling, is asking a question that I think is really pertinent because our HBCU students and college students have particular problems. He asks, how will this voting issue be dealt with for college students who attend first out-of-state universities and HBCUs in the South? Are the challenges different on PWI, predominantly white campuses, than they are on HBCU campuses, like the North Carolina A&T campus? That's the largest Black school in the country. I think they've got like 14,000 plus students. I mean, it's and the numbers grow every year. Where my parents met and married. There we go. But they have, I think, the congressional district is cut in such a way they have 3 districts on their campus. I mean, talk about slice and dice, which is crazy. So what about out-of-state students? And then what about HBCU students? Are there, because these college students have been targeted as being hotbeds of activism, right? So what say you?
Yeah, and there are a couple of things that are there for HBCU and other college students as well. Let's start with North Carolina A&T. At North Carolina A&T, one of the things that they did, their primary election is coming up this March 3rd in North Carolina. One of the things that A&T did, the students at A&T did, was that they petitioned the Board of Elections in the state of North Carolina to have an early voting site on their campus. As you've indicated, this is the largest HBCU in the nation, is North Carolina A&T by population. Well, the North Carolina Board of Elections recently had a turnover. I think it's a 5-member board. They recently had a turnover from being 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans to being 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. They denied North Carolina A&T the opportunity to have the early polling place on their campus. And that's part of a concerted. Well, they talked about money, that they didn't think it was worth the expense of having it there. They talked about the fact that other folks would not be able, outside students that voters that were not students would not be able to access the polling place that's on the campus because of parking restrictions and things along those lines. The students and the university dispelled all of the reasons why, regarding parking and access and that kind of stuff. So what it really came down to is that they did not want these students, these college students, Black college students, and some other colleges as well in North Carolina, to have access that easily to being able to vote. Cleta Mitchell is one of the attorneys that nationally has been pushing the effort against young voter efforts, as well as college students being able and access to easily vote. One of the things that she was quoted in saying was that she didn't believe that they should make it easy enough so these college students can roll out of bed, go to a polling place on their campus, and go back to bed and lay back down. Don't make it that easy for them. They wanted to make it more difficult. As a result of the effort from the students at North Carolina A&T, they did not get the early voting place because the state voted it down 3-2 along party lines. But what that will now mean is that those students will have to figure out how to get rides off campus for 5 or 7 miles, whatever the distance is, to get to a polling place so that they can cast their votes. This is it's a continued effort that we've seen coming from conservatives and those that have been trying to suppress the votes of college students, as well as those that are trying to suppress the votes of young folks. The other piece that we see happening along with that, Santita, is that the U.S. Postal Service, they're at it again. right? The U.S. Postal Service. So if you're dealing with your vote by mail and you want to do the vote by mail, what the Postal Service is now saying is that if you're in an area that's 50 miles from one of their distribution centers, when you take your ballot to be counted, it will not be counted. The day will not be postmarked the day that it's received. It may take a couple of days before they postmark it and send it forward. Well, you think to yourself, well, that doesn't sound bad so long as it's there. Here's the problem. Many of the states, not all, many of the states require that your ballot must be postmarked by the day of the election, by election day. If your ballot is not postmarked election day, it's not counted. So it's another form of voter suppression that applies for college students and those that are trying to vote by mail.
If you want to vote by mail, then, because we saw during uh, the previous Trump administration, uh, Postmaster DeJoy uh, unplugged the system. I mean, because they have been seeking to privatize the postal system for years. I mean, everyone. What we have to understand is that if the government of the United States were officially a business, it would be the biggest corporation on earth. Let me repeat. The United States government is the biggest government. It's the biggest business on earth. It generates more money than any company on earth. That's why the biggest companies on earth want to do business with our government, because it has so much money. Remember, the United States of America controls an entire subcontinent. Nobody else does that. That's why there is such a fight to keep Africa separate. Can you imagine what Africa would be like if they were the United States of Africa? Imagine, as powerful as India is becoming, as it intrinsically is, what if they decided to erase these false borders between India and Pakistan? Because remember, that was a gift from the British because they wanted to keep um, Indian people fighting. That's how they do what they do. They keep you separate. And so think about that. All of this division, but all of that money, they've wanted to privatize the postal service. And therefore, and if you notice, I mean, my postal worker who comes to my building, he is fantastic. I mean, he is really, really wonderful. And he always gets here around the same time, but sometimes, I mean, I can see that he carries a lot because they have fewer postal workers in my district. So, I mean, it's very, very difficult. They've made it very, very hard. So my question is, if I'm going to vote by mail, do I need to go to the post office and watch them postmark it? I don't want to have a fight with anybody in there. Because I know that, number one, they are short staffed. They don't have the workers in there that they had before. And they don't have the machinery that they had before. So how, if I'm going to vote by mail, and many people, the elderly, the sick, um, people who are more transient, voting by mail is all that they've got. How can you guarantee that you will have the right postmark? Is there any way to do that?
So, and there is, and the policy that we're talking about, where the postal service is saying that if you're 50 miles from, at least 50 miles from a distribution center, that your mail, your ballot that's mailed in, will not be postmarked the day that you delivered, or maybe not even the next day. That is a policy that was initiated by DeJoy. Yeah, this is the policy that he initially put in place that's now coming into being now. So one of the things that wherever you're located, that you do have the opportunity to do, you can, if you take your ballot to a postal office, to the post office, you can request that they hand postmark your ballot, and they can stamp and postmark your ballot right there in front of you as they put it in. That's the
Say that
absolute
one more
safe.
time. I've never heard that. I
Yeah,
never knew that. What can you
right.
do now?
you can take your ballot or your mail, but you can take your ballot to your post office and request that they manually postmark your ballot, and they will postmark it right there, and that removes any question about when your ballot would be postmarked and when it's received, and it should be received and accepted by the Board of Elections when it's there. Only reason I say should be, let me explain. The only reason I say should be, some boards of elections not only require that it be postmarked prior to the election day, but it be received by the Board of Elections by election day. That goes state by state, and you have to check on your state to see if that is applicable or not.
Everybody, what do you think? I mean, and are you ready for all of this? Well, you know what? It's already here because we already had elections, primaries in Texas, Minneapolis, Minnesota. You're up next you're up in the next couple of weeks. Illinois and other states. I mean, we are in the season has begun. What are you dealing with right now? Hey, Janae. Hey, Taniqua, correctional officer for the lockdown, Bernadette. Say, got to say hello to all my people today. Much love to you. Hey, Andre, sending everybody so much love. What do you think about this? What do you think about Steve Bannon's call? His call for ICE to be deployed. How will that impact you? Because it's very clear that ICE have not. They've been deployed. They've been deployed everywhere. White communities, black communities. They are everywhere, everywhere. So you help me to understand what it is that all Americans should be looking at. I mean, because Alex Pretty and Renee Good were white people, and I can't help but feel with this, with ICE, of what I've been watching on X and really on X, people posting their interactions with ICE, and they take, as they've been using their phones to capture ICE's actions. Some ICE agents have said, boom, with their phones or their device, now I have a picture of you. And one guy even said, and I'm putting it in a database, which is what Tom Homan, the border czar, said they were going to do. I mean, the kind of intimidation it's so aggressive. It's so aggressive. Um, and I don't see them. How do you think this is going to be amped up during this season? I mean, because I feel like it will be. Everybody help me with the algorithm. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, like. The more we will, you'll help us, um, you'll help us gain even more traction when you like, and share. But I need you to thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. And please meet me on Blue Sky, on Facebook, Santita Jackson and Friends. That's the only place where I can get friends. The Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Like and subscribe here. But also go to X at Santita J. Look for me, not Santita Jackson on X, but Santita J. So that's its own story. People uh, put your name in, and then they claim your domain as your own, as their own, not mine. But I want you to reach out to me on in social media. And what Bernadette called them fear mongers. Well, they are. And for people, uh, oh, wait a minute. And what do they say on my, Daryl, you said you just found out on your news feed that I come on various times now. Well, only lately. And I'll tell you, it's because I have been on the road the past few days. And so when I'm on the road, either I'm gonna have to tape early or late. So I've got a lot going on. I can't. It's much easier for me to do this in the morning. So you all let me know if it would be easier for you all to get me in the morning, most reliably, because that way it can be a little bit easier because I want to be able to get all this information to you. So Daryl, what with these choke points? I'm wondering, will they be? It seems like they're going to be everywhere. They had 3,000 agents. Now, I think they have 600 police officers in Minneapolis. They
Mhm.
had 3,000 ICE agents. Now they're down to 2,300. Um, that's a bit of a drawdown, but not really. I mean, because their tactics are still aggressive and
Mhm.
abusive. Let's just put it where it is.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out how you think that's going to work out during this election season. I mean, a season in which you now in Minneapolis, you have people on many blocks standing guard on their blocks with guns.
Mhm.
So they have unleashed something in America that I don't know if we've seen maybe almost since the American Revolution, honestly. Because I don't see temperatures cooling. And I'm wondering, see, Texas, I didn't hear about anything down there, but that's a red state. And so the administration has left them alone. Minneapolis is still there. They're still in Chicago. And these 15 places, I bet you soup to nuts, they are places where they think they might lose.
Mhm.
But you already had a swing of 31 points, right? In Texas, in a district that the president won by 14 points.
Mhm.
But the new candidate, the newly elected official, I believe he won by 17 points. So that's a 31 point swing.
Right. So yeah,
So
I wouldn't. I don't write off Texas, Santita, simply because it's a red state. I really don't.
okay.
And one of the things that Reverend has always said, right, is that there are more uh, voters that are in Texas that are not voting, that are black and brown folks, than people realize. Is some, what, 800, 900,000 folks that are actually eligible but are not necessarily exercising that right. You're going to now see. Uh, I think across this country, people that want to vote because they don't like what they're seeing in Minneapolis. They don't like what they're seeing in
Mm.
Chicago. They don't like what they're seeing in the District of Columbia. They don't like what they're seeing in Memphis, Tennessee. They don't like what ICE is doing. They don't like the deportation policy. They don't like seeing people get shot in the face. They don't like seeing peaceful protesters being dragged around and beaten about. Let's also remember there are a lot of folks, there are several people that have also been shot and not killed by ICE. We're talking about the ones
Hmm.
that were killed, not the ones that have been shot and injured by ICE. So you have all of this that's at play. And so you have a voter base now that's more engaged and wants to be heard and want to raise their voice. And so that's a part of what I believe we're going to see happening in 2026. You're going to see a lot of these people that are now, and we're hearing it from the phone banking, that people are upset by what they're seeing and they want to go and vote on it. This is the reason that I think you're going to see all of these actions going on by ICE to try to slow it down, to make it more difficult. And if they can invoke any type of fear into the people to make them intimidated about going to vote, they're going to try to do it. It's absolutely going to try to happen. There's not much of a question in my mind with regards to that at all, that these are tactics that are going to be attempted. And it's going to be incumbent upon us, number one, to overcome the fear and go and vote. Make your voting plan. If you're going to vote by mail, make your plan now to how you're going to vote by mail. Check on your voting status, because we see what they're doing in Georgia. We figure that there's some other shenanigans they're going to be messing around with, taking people off voter rolls and that kind of stuff. Go to vote.org and check on your voting status now. Make your plan. If you're going to mail in your ballot, figure out how you're supposed to go through the process of receiving the ballot. When does it have to be in the mail? When does it have to be received? Make that decision and that information now. Get it in place now. Check on the seniors, because that's going to be the other strangling point, is trying to slow down what's happening with our seniors and our seniors' ability to be able to vote. Be certain to know that they have a voting plan that's in place as well, Santita. So all those are things that we truly anticipate on seeing happening through this election cycle, and we've got to be certain that we're prepared for it.
Would you recommend that people go with someone or go in groups to vote if they're going to vote in person? There's strength in
Yes.
numbers. And it
Mhm.
seems to me that part of the
Yeah.
plan might be not to go by yourself.
Yeah, I think going in numbers is a great idea. If and if you're part of a mosque, if you're part of a synagogue, if you're part of a church, plan to go as a congregation, or just go with a bunch of friends from the neighborhood or whatever, to the place, to your polling place to be able to vote. Do it as a group. And I'll certainly reinforce and encourage people to be certain you take your telephone with you, because if something should happen, you need to hit your record mechanism and videotape what's happening. You may not be able to remember everything, but the more you can videotape, the easier it will be to create that record so that it can be used at a later time. Additionally, if folks face issues at the polls, they can call the 866 Our Vote number, 866 Our Vote, to talk about what it is that they've seen. You know, the saying is, if you see something, say something. It applies to voting too. If you see something, say something. Call the 866 Our Vote and let the folks know what you see, because there are attorneys that are deployed all across the country that will be able to assist in handling what's happening at those polls. The other piece that's there, Santita, is that I encourage, you know, any attorney that's listening to this and listening to our conversations to also get involved at the polls, to be there. The National Bar Association historically has been at polling places, some of the polling places across the country, so that issues are raised. You have attorneys that are there that you can turn to and talk to. We encourage attorneys to do that. We encourage members of the clergy to be there, and faith leaders to be there. Well, just to keep the peace at the polls, because we've seen situations where things jump off that are unintentional. But we also know that when members of the clergy and faith leaders are there, things tend to be calmed down and de-escalated pretty quickly. So we encourage that as well, Santita.
What is next, do you think? I mean, because if they're doing this in the midterms, I'm wondering what might happen in the fall. I'm not going to even go to 2028. In the fall, I mean, because the president has continued to say perhaps he'll cancel the midterms.
Mm-hmm.
If people become, if people are prompted to violence, what do you think that might? I mean, could people be prompted to violence? I mean, because you've always had saboteurs, and how should people go about this? Should you and the Transformative Justice Coalition, do what we have historically done in the civil rights movement? You train people about how you should behave in various situations. Should we not begin to spread that out and help people to know what to do when they encounter, when they're going to vote? I mean, should we now, you talk about planning your vote. You can, vote with a friend, vote with a group of friends. Just, don't be by yourself. I mean, what do you recommend that people do? Because if they said that they're thinking of putting ICE at the polls, I believe that they're already going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I mean,
is it legal? Is it legal for them to be at the polls? I mean, should they be a certain number of feet away? Or, I mean, how's that going to work?
Yeah.
Legal.
And that's all going to vary by the states, because several states have outlawed having law enforcement at polls. But the question becomes, can a state outlaw federal law enforcement from being at the polls? That's going to be one of the questions that's going to be raised, and it's going to have to be litigated. And one of the things that I encourage people to do with regards to the voting is absolutely, if you can go with a couple of friends when you go to vote, that's the way to do it. If you can vote by mail, that's your absolute best way to do it. You can even track your ballot in most states once you voted on ballot tracks, ballot TRAX. I think it's .com, ballot traction. You can track your ballot to be certain that it has been counted. But the other thing, when it comes to dealing with ICE and the interaction that people will be having with Immigration Customs Enforcement agents, is that if you go to nokings.org,
Mm-hmm.
you will see that there's a training there, trainings that are being held and we're part of the No Kings Coalition, but there are trainings that are being held to talk to people about knowing their rights and interacting with ICE agents. And your rights can change depending upon whether or not you are a U.S. citizen or a non-citizen. So your rights do change in that regard. So the nokings.org is one way to get the training, to find out the information. The ACLU also has an excellent piece on know your rights, laying out the interaction that you have with folks that are ICE agent and police in general. So both of those are sources of information for knowing how to interact. And I would also lift up, Santita, that March 28th of this year, there will be No Kings 3, of which we're going to be an integral part of. We want to be certain that our voices are heard, and that, again, will be people in the streets to voice their dissent with what they see happening across the country.
Have you, have recent events sped up the date? I mean, I know that there was going to be a No Kings March. I'm just wondering if recent events have not hastened the wind, so to speak, if they have not just made you do it just a little bit more quickly. Because I just get the sense that people really want to be in community, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Some folks, will be part of the No Kings event on March the 28th, but we also see a lot of protests in Minneapolis, for instance, that are coming up organically. These are folks that are just coming together on their own to have these rallies and these protests against what they see happening there. And I encourage people to peacefully get involved with raising your voice in your communities. This is that time to do it. And I caution people, and Santita, I know you've heard me say it dozens and dozens and dozens of times. It's not just about raising your voice for you. The next generation is watching you, and they're watching how you're dealing with this situation, so they can understand when they encounter it, how are they supposed to deal with it. We are their guiding post, and we are the ones that need to deal with this situation so that the folks that are behind us can say, yes, they dealt with this situation. This is how this situation is dealt with. This is how you peacefully protest. This is how you raise your voice. This is how you access the ballot so that you can really, really have your voice heard and amplified.
Well, take us through what it is. I mean, these last 6 or 7 minutes, just what it is that we should be doing right now, like checking our voter registration. And if you don't have same-day on-site registration, that means what? I mean, just walk us through this, because we're in the season, and you talk about it all the time, but it really doesn't resonate until you are about to vote. And now we're hearing that that they're really thinking about deploying ICE, these forces. And if they're talking about it, I think the likelihood is great that they're going to do it. They're already here, so all they have to do is be deployed. It doesn't have to be anything formalized, right? At least not to the public.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing to remember with ICE, Santita, is that 5-7 years ago, there were about 10,000 ICE agents across the country. Now we have over 20,000 ICE agents that are present and hired in the country, and they're still hiring. The other piece of that is that we also know that ICE now has a budget of some $85 billion, which is higher than all federal law enforcement agencies combined. All of them combined is less than what the Immigration Customs Enforcement Department of Homeland Security is receiving from the federal government. So that's what we're dealing with regards to what's being dispersed and what can be distributed across this country during this election season. So the first thing that people need to do is go to vote.org. Go to vote.org or vote411.org. Check on your voting status. Be certain that you're still registered to vote, because you'd be surprised at the number of people that think that they're registered to vote because they've always lived in the same address for the last 30 years. I've always gone here to vote, and they go and they look and they're not there, and they've been removed from the voter roll for whatever reason. It's a real thing. It really happens. It's going to be amped up even more during this election cycle. So the first step is certainly go to vote.org to be certain that you're registered to vote. The next step is, and I encourage people while you're in that vote.org, see if your voting precinct has been moved, where you're supposed to poll, where you go to vote. Has that changed? because we know that in some states they move. They move your polling place where you go to vote. Missouri is is extremely known for doing that. So those are the two immediate steps that folks need to take. Folks then have to decide and come up with that voting plan on how they plan on exercising their right to vote. You know, are they going to try to vote by mail if it's available in your state, or are you going on election day? Know the times if your decision is to wait till election day, not early voting, maybe because it's not available or because you decide you're going to wait because you'd like to do it on the actual day of election. Know the times that the polling place are open. And it becomes even more important for you to be certain that you're in the right polling place for where you're supposed to go vote if you're going to do it on election day.
What if
So
your
all
polling place is, what if your polling place is late opening? What do you do?
if your polling place is late opening, hopefully you'll be able to return to come back to be able to vote, because they should also extend the voting period that they have at that voting site for the period of time that they were closed. But
Mm-hmm.
you need to contact the 866 Our Vote to let them know what has happened, so that sometimes it requires petitions before the courts to get the polling place in that particular polling site extended, the time extended. But if they're late opening, they should extend the time that they are open and that voting is available, so that you are not short-sighted or shortened on time. Similarly, we've seen situations where they run out of ballots. If they run out of ballots, what do? They have to go get ballots, and so people can't vote because they have no ballot for folks to vote on. Same thing. We've got to be certain that the polls are extended so that so that whatever period of time people couldn't vote, it's got to be then added onto the end to allow people to have that opportunity to exercise that right to vote. All of that are pieces that are real things that are really happening, that folks need to be aware of, Santita.
Well, closing thought from you. Steve Bannon calls for ICE to be deployed to the polls. The president calls for the nationalizing of elections, concentrating on 15 areas. Just a day later, what are we looking at? And and I have to tell you, someone just asked if protesting matters. I think it was Royce Rolls. I love the name. Do you really think protesting is going to help? Do you think
Mhm.
that voting is a form of protest? Or can
Voting is absolutely, yeah. I mean, voting is absolutely a form of protest with regards to your raising your voice. What a protest is a protest is raising your voice, whether it's in support or opposition. It's raising your voice. Voting is a way of voicing your concern, of voicing your opinion, of voicing whether or not you're in favor or opposed to something that's occurring, whether it's a candidate or an issue. Voting is that piece. So voting absolutely is a form of protest. Protesting does matter, if for no other reason than it raises the issue. If you're silent, people have no idea what's going on. They just don't know. It's the protest that raises the issue, that lifts it up so that people can see that this is an issue, that this is a concern, and it needs to be addressed. That's one of the big pieces, I think, of the protest, is to raise that issue, to try to get those issues addressed in a public forum. That's why we do the No Kings. That's why you see millions of people showing up across this country during the No Kings protests and doing other protests to raise their voice of concern. So this is that time. We need to be certain that we're supportive, I think, of No Kings on March the 28th. We need to be certain that we're at the polls, that we're registered to vote, and we're exercising that right, so that give a greater likelihood that the folks that are representing us in Congress, the folks that are representing us in the various levels of government, are voicing our concerns and are addressing our concerns and are hearing our concerns. That's the way that we do that, Santita. And that's why I push so hard for people to be certain that they have that right to vote. The one other thing I wanted to say, Santita, because we only touched on it a little bit, one of the big issues that I love delving into are returning citizens, those that have been formally convicted of a felony. We don't hear the conversation enough that in many states, not every state, in many states across the country, if you've been convicted of a felony and your feet are in the street, you have the ability to vote. you need to go to vote.org and you can find out whether or not, once you've been convicted of a felony, if you still have that right to vote. If you do, you need to go and exercise that right. All that you've heard us talking about today on this show with regards to ICE, with regards to policing, many of those presents that are at the poll, they're going to be done to try to intimidate. And if you're a person that's a returning citizen, you may, and you're on probation or something like that, you may feel super intimidated about having police at the poll, which is the reason why many of the states have made it unlawful for there to be a police presence at the poll for that very reason, because we're supposed to be encouraging people to vote, not discouraging people from voting. So if you're one of those returning citizens, please go to vote.org, find out if you're able to vote in your state. And once you learn that you are able to vote, find out where you're supposed to vote, be certain you're registered, and go exercise that right. And don't let anyone intimidate you or turn you around as you march toward that ballot box.
Attorney Daryl Jones. Catch him on WOLDC News Radio every Tuesday. He and Barbara online at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. You want this kind of talk and so much more. They are the leading voting rights advocates in the country. We've got to protect our vote. And you got to vote, everybody. Coming up, let us talk about the Olympics. Yeah, they started. I can't believe it. I'm waiting. Figure skating. I love it. I love it. I love it. But it's the Olympics. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the Haitian team. They were not allowed to put Toussaint Louverture on their uniforms. Can you believe it? He's still a contentious figure. A couple hundred years later, we're going to talk about another day. But J.D. Vance and his wife were booed, but the broadcasters were not allowed to show that. So was many people booed our team, America's team, as they came in. They were booed. Still, they were not allowed. What is going on, everybody? And that's happening in real time. I was at the US Open when President Trump was there. He was booed loudly in real time, but if you saw the news in real time, you didn't hear it. What is going on, everybody? And we're going to have Greg Palast talking to us about protecting your vote. I'm going to drum that into everybody because you got to get out here and vote. Sending you much love, Daryl Jones. Come on with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.